only compensates solar customers on a real-time basis, not net metering like all the neighboring utility companies do. And a Broncos utility who does have a similar fee does 100% net metering with the rollover of any extra that they produce going to future months. Therefore, I would see that that fee is justified. Felps does not do this. Felps is very anti-solar, and we're hoping this will soon change with the new leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron Schreiner?
Yeah, we're talking about what she's talking about. I mean, you know, I was told that we all gotta pay our fair share. Well, if you go to the gas pump, and I have a motorcycle, I wanna put 3 gallons in, and you have a truck that puts 40 gallons in, is there a sign saying that I have to pay my fair share of buying 40 gallons at one time? No, but y'all charging this extra fee that's really a bogus fee, because like she said, solar power is clean power, and we're making extra power. How can you give us reactive power back to our house when we're pumping our electricity back onto the line? So we're not benefiting from any of the reactive power that you're supplying, other than the fact that night when we're not using solar power. That's the only time that we get, but y'all told us that everybody pays their fair share of reactive power. Well, we're paying twice. So, and the government gave us the opportunity to get power, solar power, and no, and all the other power companies around here give incentives where y'all don't want to, but yet y'all are looking at building solar farms to benefit from solar, and we're having to pay the cost for that, and I don't see that that's right. We built a pretty efficient house. We doubled up on the insulation. We drive a eco-friendly car that's a hybrid. So we're trying to do our part. We're trying to do our part and get the ecosystem for everybody to breathe clean air, and we're getting penalized for it. And I'd like to see this falsely billed that's being charged, because the other general manager that was here came up and made that false charge. He even told us, even yourself, Mr. Michigan, y'all had a meeting with us and told us that we could have called it anything we wanted, but we got to make a certain amount of money, but yet you're calling yourselves non-profit organization, but yet you're looking at the profit margin. But yet you write debt off every month, but you're trying to get it at us. And all we're doing is doing what was fairly given to us for opportunity to take that advantage of opportunity. We're not taking advantage of y'all or anybody else. It's just that we're looking to save money because we're in retirement. So we gotta save our coins, just like y'all gotta make coins to stay alive. I understand all that. But what is fair is fair. I mean, hopefully this new general manager can see through all the cobwebs and see that we falsely got charged on a bill that shouldn't even be on there anyway. Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowe, can we put that on a future meeting too for discussion? This is my first official meeting, so I'd like to know a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so we'll just bring it up again when we go to, we're gonna go later in the meeting, we'll have, set the agendas for the farther agendas. So just remind us when we put it on that time. Review and action on the minutes for the meeting held November 28th, 2018.
Can we do all of them at the same time? Except for- I had one correction, but in the original, but I see that it's been corrected here on the very last one, which was the mayor, yes, of January the 4th, the mayor was absent, but I see it's been included in this copy. Okay.
Do I have a motion to approve all the minutes that are listed on our sheet?
I so move that we approve the minutes for November 28th, November 30th, December 4th, December 13th, and January the 4th.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Castillo makes a motion, Mr. Akins seconds, all in favor?
No, I wasn't at the January 4th, so I
We
can't.
corrected that one.
It's
already.
corrected.
Okay.
No, but I mean, I can't vote on that
Oh,
one,
yeah.
no.
Oh.
So
Well, even if you stay that way.
Yeah.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I abstain from all the meetings except the 4th, and I'll vote yes on that too.
Okay. You got that, Marcy?
Mhm.
All right, motion carries. Review the financial statements for November, December 2018. She likes that.
She's the-
So we have two financial statements, and I'll warn you that December's is not final yet. This is our first year with the new auditor, and there's a lot more trying to figure out what the other auditor did, and then quality control going through their people since it's their first audit. So they're actually here for the second week, trying to finalize everything before they present the audit to you in February. So what you see in front of you is a draft for December. November's is final. And we'll kind of go through them both at one time, that way you can see the comparisons month to month. So our customer count for November versus December actually decreased. In November, we had 15,932 customers, and we dropped down to 15,908 customers. That's probably just to do with the billing cycles. We could have had more people, you know, somebody move out, bill, and then somebody move right back in the next day that didn't get caught on that billing cycle. So I'm not concerned about that, but we do have the fluctuations between one month and the other. So overall, we ended up with the 1.25% growth over 2017. We predict in all of our financial forecasts, we don't necessarily look at customer growth anymore, we look at kilowatt hour growth per class, because this number doesn't mean what it used to be with energy efficient homes. So kilowatt hour purchases for November were right at 26 million, and in December were 28 million. December's would have been higher because we had a little bit colder weather. It was 7% higher than last year in November, and 5%, we ended just about 5% higher. That can be attributed to the hotter summer. Last year we had a cold snap that we didn't have, and that's why there's a little bit of a decrease there. Our kilowatt hour sales were about the same between the 2 months, 25 and 24 million. That left us year end at 8% higher. And we do have the lag between CPS and when CPS bills us and when we bill our customers, so sometimes you will see that reflected here. Our revenue billed for November was right at 2.8 million, and pretty much the same thing for December. So overall, it was an increase of 3% over 2017, and that again goes right back to the sales. Other income year-to-date also decreased between November and December, percentage-wise. We ended the year right at 2 million. Other income, and that's the fees that we charge for penalties or line extensions or even our transmission access revenue. And where we really see the difference is in line extension. We had a large extension in December of 2017 that we just didn't have in 18. So it's only a $38,000 difference between where we were in 17 and where we ended in 18. But we did end about 2% lower year-to-date than where we were at in other income in 2017. So those two together lead us to our total net revenue. We ended November at 14.3 million and December at 15.5 million, and that's a 5% increase over this time last year. Again, that's mostly due to sales. Other income is just such a small percentage that it doesn't really factor in here a whole lot. So we had our two budgets, our operating and our capital, and we ended both of them at about 6.6 million. Our operating budget was 5.4% under, which equates to about $373,000 less than what we budgeted. And our construction program also ended at 6.6 million, which is about 17.4%. It equates to 1.4 million. And for those of you who recall, we were not able to build the Sullen Springs circuit like we had predicted. And that's pretty much that amount. We had budgeted a little bit more for that, but we picked up projects because we knew we wouldn't finish that, and that is budgeted in 2019. So our net income year-to-date, or for November, was 286,000. For December is right at 155. The auditors received an updated actuary report this week, which is not reflected in income, but it's actually dropping pension expense, so I expect the final net income number to be a little bit higher. Any questions?
May we have a copy of your report?
It's in there. It should be in there. It's before the green tab and after the green tab. So here's November, and then there should be, sorry, I should have told you this. And then right here,
Oh, thank you.
It's December.
I see everyone was flipping through it, so we
I-
couldn't find it.
No, I was looking for the December, I saw the
Yeah.
November
Yeah,
financial.
Yeah.
because we have them together on the agenda,
Yeah.
so we just separate them out with a sheet of paper, but I should have
Going
pointed
back
out
and
that.
forth,
I
this
apologize.
December there, November here.
I didn't see that.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You want me to go, you want me to give you
No,
a
no,
minute to look?
perfect, thank you.
Nope,
Marcy.
it was behind the green sheet like I
Yeah.
thought it'd be, I just didn't catch it.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for Marcy?
Thank you, Marcy, thank you.
Review and action on bad debt charge-off for the months of November and December 2018. That's you.
That's me.
Huh?
That's me, I'm
Oh,
flipping.
okay,
Mr. Lowe's getting a break today.
okay.
We had quite a few write-offs in November and December, which is kind of typical. We still follow the same cycle of billing and disconnecting and then bad debting. That didn't change, but it's just we're getting some of the fall and early winter bills. So we have several accounts that were over 500. Most of them are disconnect for non-pay, and then by the time we get to that cycle, they have a current bill, and then they have a half a unbilled portion. 3 of the customers were considered good credit, which means they hadn't hit any of our triggers to require deposit, they hadn't been on the cutoff list before, they hadn't asked for extensions, had return checks, things like that. There were 2 that had larger deposits, and they still left us with a larger bill. So what we typically do is, if you have a $300 deposit on file with us, and then you hit one of those triggers, either you've been on the disconnect list, or you've been disconnected, or you have a return check or something like that, then we reevaluate your location history and say, okay, now you're using $400 a month, which means your deposit needs to be this. In these cases, it's just, either they didn't have that trigger that made it raise, but they have pretty large deposits, so, it just seems to be one of those things, you try your best, but they're still the ones that get through. And then the theft of powers are still around, those are pretty prevalent, I guess,
Marcy,
now
that
it's
fourth
easier.
one from the bottom, was that a business?
On which month? November?
The
November,
504th
yeah.
one from the bottom, 1, 2, 3.
Had a 650 deposit and then 1491.
I can't tell from here.
Okay.
It's
Well,
in
it
Elmendorf,
should
so
be-
I would guess
It's a rate
not.
100, so
Is
it
it
should
rate
be
100?
residential.
Where's the, yeah, no, these are all residential.
Yeah,
Now
they're
that
all-
you-
The second one
Or
from the
small,
top is not,
yeah.
it's a rate 200.
This has always been a kind of a bone of contention with us every month. So you're coming in as the new GM, if you have any ideas, suggestions, or on how we're handling this, please let us know in the future.
Okay.
Because
Marcy, do we do a comparison from last year?
Yes, that's behind you have November and December, their explanations, and then there's some graphs, but if you look right past the graph, you'll see,
Oh, I
actually
see.
the very last page
The
in that section.
2017, yes, I see that.
Yeah, so you can see month by month, and we also in this sheet, there's accidents, because we consider them a bad debt. We'll go over that in the next, agenda item, but that's partly why that number's larger than what you see in the Decembers.
Do you know offhand, can you share with them what percentage this is compared to sales?
Compared to sales, that's your second to last sheet in that tab, and it's less than 1%. It's 0.15% for year-to-date. So year-to-date, we lost 60,000, and we billed almost 40 million.
Remind me, Marcy, do we have an agency that tries to, we do, okay.
We do. Once we try to collect it ourselves, it goes to a collection agency and they put it on their credit report. So if you try to buy a house, it would affect you. If you're just going to another utility, maybe not, but if they come back to us before we'll let them connect, they
Sure.
have to recover that bad debt.
Okay. And do we have any percentage of what's coming back, what is actually being collected?
Yes, we do. That's something I track, but it's difficult because they may come back and pay us, but it's only because they're trying to clear their credit report. We collect about 75% of it in-house,
Okay.
but it may have been because they called us instead of calling the collection agent and paid.
Okay.
So it's really difficult. I think if we didn't have it, that number would be significantly lower, because some of those customers don't come back on the system. And that's the only way we'd be able to recoup that money, is if they were in-house, coming back to set up an account.
So on this 9,800, this is possibly 75% of this may be collected, or up to 75% on the average.
Collection, oh, no. If you look at the recovery amount, it's in the second, it's on the second sheet, the second column. That's how much we're collecting, but that could be bad debts from 7 years ago.
Yeah.
They typically don't pay the next month. It's several months out.
Okay.
So our collection it's working, but it's not a great percentage.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion to approve the bad debt charge off for the months of November, December 2018?
I so moved.
Ms. Castillo makes a motion, do I hear a second?
I'll second.
The mayor seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and action on the miscellaneous bad debt charge.
Yeah, these are the ones that I was telling you about. So we've talked about accidents before. If they don't have insurance, or the primary insured says, I didn't give my son or daughter permission and they were the one in the accident, insurance denies it. There's no other recourse for us. We can't put it on their electric bill. Some of them don't even live around here. They're just traveling through. So after we've made several attempts to call, mail them the invoice, if we get a police report with an insurance company, we'll just call the insurance company ourselves and try to get that paid. But in these cases, we weren't able to, get in contact with that customer to make payment, or they didn't make payment.
It was mentioned by a former law official that if you go through our system, you can do it JP file on these particular people, that it actually gets to Austin where they can't renew their driver's license, they can't go further with it, and they would have to pay to be able to get their driver's license back. Are we trying to do any of that?
No, we had looked at with the collection agency, but we don't have their social security number. So, we weren't able to do that, but I didn't know there was another means to.
Yes, and she had told me that we could go through it, and she had actually told a former GM about it and didn't really get anywhere. But there's a way of, like I said, according to this particular person, we could go through the justice system, and therefore they couldn't renew their driver's license, they couldn't get a driver's license until they pay it off.
I'll look into it. This is the first I'm hearing about it, so.
I'm not 100% certain on that, but I do know if you do go through the JP Small Claims Court, they would file a lien against them where they cannot buy a house. If they sold a house, you could recover the money. So all of that could be done on that aspect. So if these people had a home or were to buy one.
No, you can go through the, I think, and I'm not the law person, but go through the JP's office. It'd be worth us looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, go through the JP's, but then from there it goes to the state, and
Yes.
so the state can say, you don't get a driver's license, you can't.
Yeah, so once it goes to the JP, what you have to do is, if the JP rules in your favor, you have to go file it then with the court. The JP will not file it, you have to take it there to file it. And then it'll be on record, and then anything that, then when they do checks with them, they cannot sell, buy, do anything until that debt is paid.
So we just get a court cost for the small claims,
Yeah,
and
and
then.
the court cost in them is probably about $150.
And is this for all, or just property destruction?
On this damage or the destruction would be not for them walking a bill.
Thank you.
Walking a bill, this, I hate to say it, but that's normal for the industry. The numbers that you're looking at here are not out of line from any other utility that you look at. It's just the cost of doing business in the electric industry, water industry,
I think the
natural gas.
banking industry, if they don't lose over 3%, they're happy.
Yeah. Okay. That's one recourse for that, is looking at that, besides what you were mentioning possibly.
Right,
Okay.
right, because these are pretty high.
Yeah.
And this should have been going against the work order to repair that, so, really, you're out that, you just put that back into the system. We ended up paying the utility for repairing the system itself. Cost of material and labor for that is how it should have been billed. Is that how you worked it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Can we look into doing these three?
Yeah, you can do any of them that are on there, as long as they're within the 2-year time frame.
Right.
Or they fall within that.
Oh, yeah, this is, we don't leave things that we know are gonna be uncollectible on the
Okay.
books.
Yeah, so you can go back to any of those within that 2-year time frame to file.
Okay.
Do I hear a motion to approve the miscellaneous bad debt charge-offs for the month of December 2018?
I so move.
Ms. Castillo makes a motion. Do I hear a second?
You want me to be the bad guy?
I told you we should've gone gambling, you on a roll.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Atkins seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Mayor's opposed.
Mayor's opposed? Okay.
Motion carries. Review and action on the distribution of participating cities for the year of 2018.
As most of y'all recall, the system agreement that the 3 cities signed in 1996 says that the board has the ability to give the 3 owner cities, with the percentage of their ownership, up to 3% of gross electric sales. So because it says up to 3%, every year it's a board vote as to what that percentage should be. What's reflected in your book is 3%, and it takes action in order to start those distributions, which the first one would be today. And this is based on 2018's sales. And they'll get 1/12 every month.
I make a motion that we pay the cities their 3% as reflected in the report.
I second.
Mr. Aiken, makes a motion, Ms. Castillo seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and action on the quarterly investment report.
Just gonna use your book. Okay. So, this is a little bit high because we issued bonds and it closed December 28th. So, in the general operating, you're gonna see that 16 million. It's coming down to construction, which is a restricted fund, but because of the timing of the end of the year, it's still reflected in here in operating. So if you look at that, there's, we ended 12/31 with 36 million, which really that should be 20 million, which is a decrease from, what it was in the quarter. That can be because we're paying for projects, or the CPS bill was higher than what we collected from our customers. It's not that great of an amount. And then the construction fund, right now, we only have, or during this period, we only had a couple of accounts kept open just so that we could keep from opening and closing. And so that balance should be right at 16,005,000. So that, the net position change is correct, it's 15,815,000, and we had the 16 million influx, so that's just a change of, a little less than 200,000 decrease in those funds. Our restricted funds are, shown below. We ended 12/31 with 949,000 in customer utility deposits. That reflects exactly what we've collected from the customer. So if the customer has given us a deposit, it goes in this fund and it can't be used for anything but deposits. And the decrease is because either we refunded deposits, and that balance dropped. Repair and replacement is at 250, that takes board approval, and we'll work on that this year. Remember, if you'll recall, we had about 750,000 in it, and then we used some of it for the pole replacement project, and the plan was to build that back up this year, and so we'll come to you with plans for doing that later in this year. And then the next one is our principal and interest payment. We have to transfer monthly a portion of our principal and the interest for the outstanding bonds, and so that increased by 668,000 because in this quarter there were no payments for either the principal payment or the bond payment. There is in February, so in the next quarter you'll see half of the interest being paid down. And the last one is the one I wanted to remind you about, the reserve fund. With the 2018 bond issue, we no longer have to keep this fund. So this money's already been transferred out of here. It has to be used for construction, it has to be used for capital projects. So at this time period, it reflected 1.5 million, and that's been moved on. And that was an increase of 41,000 because prior to the bond ordinance change, we had to fund it $11,000 a month. So overall, that section of restricted funds changed about $670,000. Mostly that's due to principal and interest, having to put that portion in there every month. Overall, we had a $16 million increase. Again, that's bond funds, and that will be used over the next 3 years to fund the portion of capital projects that we had planned.
Right. When do we need to talk about what we're gonna do with this?
Right now, it's sitting in construction, it's sitting in there as a restricted, so it's, as we get Mr. Lowe,
Which one were you pointing at, the reserve fund?
the reserve.
No,
fund,
reserve.
moving that money.
Is, could it be transferred into some of it to repair and replacement, is that considered capital?
Normally
Because it's
not.
not a capital expenditure,
That's
it would
correct.
just be a county transfer.
Yeah, if you recall, and this is board approval recalls, but, we had talked about using some of that to do something with the facility.
Right.
Because we didn't ask for any bond money for renovations or, upgrades or anything like that, so that's a capital project. Summerlin Springs, that circuit's a capital project. If we, Mr. Lowe looks at some of the projects and say, no, this is a priority, it could be used for that, but none of that is decided yet, it's all up to what the board wants to do.
Yeah, Marcy, correct me if I'm wrong, but it might not be in the actual bond document, but wasn't that part of the argument to the council that we needed a new facility or repair to the facility?
It was presented as, that's what we
Yeah.
had kind of earmarked it for, but it was always disclosed that
It's
what
not
we
part of it,
planned is
yeah.
not. There was some questions about whether we issued bonds for a new building when the board hadn't given us that authorization, and that is not the case. We did not issue bonds for the building. But we did kind of earmark this, knowing that if the board didn't want to go that direction, we can always use it for other capital projects. Because we're only funding, we're funding the capital at 66% bonds. The rest is cash. So this can go to the cash portion, or it can go to a project that we didn't foresee, or we want to speed up, or any dynamic mixture you want to do.
Just in case I forget at the end of the meeting when we talk about the next agenda, I think this should be part of our discussion is a new facility or repair a facility, something to that effect.
I agree with you.
So any questions on
Making those suggestions?
this?
No, you are.
I forget.
I know.
I will remember.
My half-timers kicks in at once, I'll forget.
Do I hear a motion to approve the quarterly investment report?
I'll make the motion.
Mayor makes a motion, do I hear a second?
I second it.
Ms. Castillo seconds, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Review and action on recording Felps board meetings to enhance meeting minutes.
So this was tabled because it was a 2-2 vote while Mr. Muchigamba was out, and it was asked that it be put back on the January board meeting for a vote.
The reason I had asked for this is just so that we do not come across a problem in the future. I know we haven't had one in the past, but the kind of business that we're taking care of in our board meetings, I would highly recommend that we do this, just so that there's no problems later on. If the news media wants information on it, or if we have a question as a board member, what happened, that's why I put this on the agenda. Most boards or committees that I'm on, we do this. It's not an uncommon practice.
And the question that I had at the time was, is this a time management problem for whoever's gonna be taking care of this?
Yeah, I sat down with my mayor and city manager, and they're going, you're gonna open a can of worms, because if somebody says, I need the minutes of last month's meeting, you can take and hand them a printed copy, and that takes care of it. If you do it by recording, somebody in this establishment's gonna have to be available to sit down with whoever wants to listen to whatever they wanna listen to, until they get through listening to
Now,
it.
the process has been, and we did it for years with the city, is that you get it recorded, but the city secretary or whoever's in charge would go back and do the handwritten minutes or continue doing it. This would be for purposes in case there's a question. It's not in place of a written minutes. It's to have it in case there is a problem, or the person doing the minutes. If you know, it didn't work out, then we have it in the back, but it's not to replace the written minutes.
Well, that was also brought up, and they're going, you don't wanna have both, you wanna have either or. So,
Well, to approve the minutes, it would have to be in writing. So you couldn't have just written, I mean, if you're gonna do a recording, that would be separate. I would think.
Right, because we did it for many years with the city where we